This is Progress Culture. Progress Culture is a weekly happening where master drummer Paul F. Murphy and I share live improvised music and impromptu conversations with people from various fields and expertises about community, value, art, science, freedom, and progress for all. We are excited to share it all with you, so have a listen and see what's going on this week on Progress Culture. Now, let's get into the show. But first, let's hear some music. Everybody, welcome to Progress Culture. Paul Murphy and Dominic Fragman here today doing the show with the ever-exciting Brian Jordan. What's going on?
Glad to be here.
Glad you're back.
Yeah, glad.
It's good to have you. What's been going on?
Oh, wow. Just been busy hanging out here at TechPort, trying to make some things happen here. So always exciting here to watch you guys play. So just excited.
We're glad that you are here for that, man. It's I feel like every week I see you come in, and I almost feel like you come in because you want to hang out do this.
Well, I think I told you before, it's like getting a free concert every Tuesday. You come here and you get a concert. I mean, what more could you want? And I'm learning along the way. You guys tell me some things that I've never heard before. Like I said, my family, it's kind of funny. I was talking to Paul earlier today, and there's 4 of us in our family. Yeah. 2 boys, 2 girls. I'm the oldest, and I'm not musically inclined at all. And my youngest is not musically inclined, but we have the 2 middle kids that are musically inclined. Like my brother plays the bass guitar, upright bass, and I think my sister plays the cello, violin, and some other stuff, and I don't play anything. So when I come and watch you guys and learn, it's like I've never heard this stuff before, but I'm sure my siblings will be like, "What? You didn't know that?" So I'm excited just to watch you guys be here. So
well, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure that you come. It really is. I'm proud to say that you're here.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from you, man. You definitely are one of the smartest people I've ever met. So.
Oh gosh, you probably don't know a lot of people.
Well, I mean, I heard you were talking about some pretty interesting stuff last week after the show.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, speaking of things that I've never heard or that one has never heard, I didn't realize that there was a point where our population hit like just 10,000 worldwide.
Right. I did a TED Talk a few years back, and one of the points I talked about was at one point in time, we know this because of our DNA. I mean, they've actually pretty much mapped the human genome within the past 5 years, and they found out that our numbers had dwindled to less than 10,000 on the entire planet.
Wow.
And that's amazing to me because 10,000 in one area in the entire planet, and now there's 7 billion of us. So what that tells me is that we're all closer than we realize. There was I think it was an 8th grader that did a study when Obama was president. They had found out that all the presidents were related. And that kind of was like, wow, that's interesting. Either something's going on or we're a lot closer than we think.
Right. And
I think that's probably what it is. If we looked at your DNA and we looked at mine, there is a common ancestor somewhere back there. Mm-hmm. We may go back 10 generations, or maybe like 5. We don't know, but there is a common ancestor. And a lot of people don't realize it may be more recent than they think. So it really doesn't matter, what color you are, where you're from on the planet. We're all connected.
Right.
We're all humans.
We're all humans, yeah.
And we're beings.
That's it.
And hopefully we're trying to make things more positive for each other.
Right.
And everyone, as well as the planet that we're on.
That's true. If you look at things that way, if you look at it as, if I think of you as my brother, I'll be less apt to do bad things to you, and vice versa. So I think, if we think about things that way, and I look at every person we meet that way as this is a potential relative, we'll treat them a little differently,
Sure.
But everyone doesn't see that. So,
well, that sort of fits into with the work that we have done with the spirit of innovation and freedom and the spirit of jazz and democracy, was to sort of highlight those things.
Right.
As far as, at this point, we spend a lot of time speaking about it in terms of just how the universe works, which is exactly what we're talking about here, too, but in a more ethereal way and in a more scientific way when we speak about thermodynamics and quantum mechanics and how these things and the infinite truths of the universe, infinite possibilities of the universe. But the idea that we're all connected and we should afford each other that value, that respect, that consideration was sort of baked and built into the work that we do and the music that we play.
Right.
The way that we utilize it in the music is that you are exploring all the different ideas as if they were all equally as valuable.
That's right.
And putting them to use for their value or creating with that, based upon that as a foundation. And the same is true, like when we talk about the sort of core values of the spirit of innovation and freedom and progress culture and the music that we play as mutual listening, open communication, positive interaction towards progress, and the exploration and embracing of different ideas and perspectives. And the spirit of jazz and democracy did that in a way that was much more focused on civic engagement, the work we do with Dr. Sybil Anderson. Mm-hmm. And she was very integral in sort of getting that program out there. We had a residency at St. Mary's College. We did some stuff at Regis in Denver and Loyola. And it was based around that idea that we should all be treating each other as if we're connected, because guess what? we absolutely are.
We are connected.
We are. We're connected physically as well as mentally and spiritually. We're all connected.
Right.
Like we talked about Newton's theories and his laws of motion, energy is neither created nor destroyed, but simply changes form. Mm-hmm. So the energy that's you has always been here and will always be here, and so we're all connected to the universe or God, as you want to say it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I look at people, I think of people, they're my brothers and sisters, mm-hmm. So, we're all connected, and I love everyone, and that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I remember a story that you were talking about a week or so ago about how that different animals did learn to use tools.
Yes.
And one of the main reasons that we did learn to use a tool was because of the saber-toothed tiger.
That's right.
Who was doing great damage to man.
That's exactly right. That's one of the points I talked about during the TED Talk. As we talked, the saber-toothed tiger is what hunted us to extinction around the world. There's a term you called it, Dominic, last time we talked about, where if I figure something out, there's someone else on the other side of the planet. That's what'd you call it?
Morphic resonance.
That's it. Morphic resonance. It's kind of one of the things we talked about last time too. Is if there was a picture that was done, there were like 20 faces in this picture, and they asked people to find the faces. Everyone could find maybe 7, but no one could find all 20. And they sent this picture all around the world, different continents, Australia, Europe, Africa, Asia, different countries around the world. Then as soon as one person found all 20, everyone else found all 20. I mean, it was like, wow. So, and same thing when we discovered fire. It's like when one group discovered it, we all discovered it. And I think you talked about last time too, there was, I think a group of either monkeys or gibbons, they would season their food with salt water. And once one did it, all of them did it around the world, no matter where they were, whether they're in South America or Asia, and what'd you call that again?
Morphic resonance.
Morphic resonance, yeah. So that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So it tells you that we're really all are connected.
Rupert Sheldrake, I think is the guy's name, where I heard that concept. I'm not saying he coined the term or anything, but I think that was the guy that I heard that work, that type of idea from. And yeah, so that's, I'm glad you brought that conversation up, because there was something else that you said in that conversation, not on the episode, but from what you were talking about with the saber-tooth, where you spoke about, we spoke about what the distinguishing factor of being human was.
Right.
And I had mentioned something about high development of tools, and you kind of said, yeah, but, plenty of people, plenty of entities and species are figuring out or have figured out how to successfully utilize tools. I was thinking of it more in the terms of what we do with technology, but perhaps that, because it's like a high level of development of tools, essentially.
Right.
And I guess it plays into what you said, which was, what did you say? It was
art.
Yeah.
Art is a defining factor of intelligence. I mean, I was in California, and you go out to, what's a place called? Carmel by the Sea. They got sea otters out there. Mm-hmm. And they'll actually take rocks and put rocks on their bellies and crush oyster shells with rocks. So they're using tools. I think chimpanzees actually take sticks and they put them in anthills and use them to funnel the ants out. So using tools doesn't necessarily make us human, but it's art. The fact that we're able to create something that doesn't serve a purpose other than enjoyment. That's something we've done since the beginning of time. And I think the other gentleman that was here with us, we talked about
David Lowe.
David Lowe, yeah, he talked about how I think it was during World War II in one of the concentration camps, which was a horrible time. But there was a group in there that actually formed a band to play play music while they were being in that camp. And I think so. He said someone asked him, well, why would you do that? And it was like, what else were we going to do?
Right.
So that is a higher level function that no other being on this planet that we know of right now does. That creation of art, whether it's drawing, painting, music, or technology. That's where it all comes from.
is it? I sort of while you were speaking about I was trying to figure out, is there a difference between the utilization of tools in the way that, let's just say you're saying like animals are doing it, and what I was sort of getting at with the higher developed idea,
right,
is our use of tools, the way that we use them, what distinguishes it? Because are we developing art? Do our tools facilitate the art?
I think that our use of not only art, but the development of the tools is to progress mankind and also to help. In other words, I know that sitting right here is a gentleman who designed a bookcase, and that bookcase in major flooding can be emptied and used as a boat to float. And that's saving people's lives. So that touches on both progress,
right,
and love and help,
empathy,
and
sure.
hope.
Sure.
And as well as we often talk about this too, but there's there's a certain amount of technical foundation that's required, right, to execute in that, and the development of your use of knowledge and tools, I guess, and that produces I guess part of what I'm wondering is, would you say that technology is an artful development of tools?
Well, I guess it's one of those things like you talk about life imitating art, or so I don't. That's a good question. That's a really good question.
And I mean, maybe we should narrow down the definition of technology a little bit, and I do mean things like this.
Sure.
Would you consider this an art?
Well, art certainly goes into it.
Yeah.
Me, myself, I'm not really an artistic type person because I don't really have an eye for color and things like that. So I work with people that do have that eye. So I know when Steve Jobs was working on the, which phone was it? I forget which one. When he was designing it, he talked to his, the art people. He said, I want it to look like you want to eat it. I want it to look edible, so I want it to be appealing to the eye, so that was the art going into that technology. But I do think there's a level of technology that has to go into art, when you go back to cave paintings and things like that. You go back to cave paintings, we look at an arrow, when natives of all, and talk about that, what do you call it, morphic
resonance.
Morphic resonance. It's one thing, we look at natives from every country around the world through history, they all use bows and arrows, every one. Right. And they all are built the same. And so that's that level of art. And there's a technology that goes in there too. It has to be able to go straight. And what do they put? They use feathers to make it go straight. But there's an artistic purpose for the feathers too. Some say it's spiritual, which feathers they use and how it's made and that type of thing. So yeah, it all kind of goes together.
Do you think, that's interesting, because I typically think of standardization as almost an imposed process, right? Where let's just say, when I think about periods of art, and I think about, when I say Egyptian art, or I say Greek art, what I mean.
Absolutely.
You pretty much have an idea, you
say Cubism,
right.
Picasso,
right, and you have an
Flemish,
idea of
or
what that
have
is.
you.
But even more particular than something like Cubism, which is more of a style, Egyptian and Greek art were almost things that embodied that culture, not just a specific type of doing it. Right, it became that, but it's almost like you would be led to believe that's the only kind of art that was being produced in that time, right?
Right.
And there had to be other artists that were not painting or doing art in a hieroglyphic manner in Egypt, and I imagine there were people who weren't just doing sculpture. And
well,
those are the things that get codified.
They've looked inside the pyramids and have found thousands of paintings that were done on walls that had absolutely no light. There's no light there today. There wasn't any light there then. Now, the thing is, how did they do it? how were they able to do that?
Well, that poses a lot of
And then
theories,
there's paintings, the same painting shows someone that has something that looks very similar to a light.
to a battery. They found the
Yes.
Baghdad batteries and
Right.
and Iraq and all those places. I mean, not to go down too deep down a rabbit hole, but when we talk about as art, when we say the Egyptian art, was that really art? Or was that their way of communicating? For instance, when my kids were young, I always played like this little game. If we traveled 100,000 years into the future and they found a book, what would they think of it? Someone may say, wow, this is a beautiful piece of art. But no, it's really not art. It's just how we wrote things down in books. But 100,000 years in the future, they may think of other ways to communicate. So they'll look at our archaic method and say, it's a piece of art, or we don't know what it was for. So was it art, or was it, like you say, a culture or their way of life or their way of doing things?
I think that's a different, the difference there is that's a very blurry line.
Right, exactly.
Right?
And
is it art? Is
to
it
the
their
point you
culture?
made, exactly, right. Technology and art. I mean, they really both go hand in hand. You really can't have one without the other. Like when we talked about the boat case, when we first designed it, I made it just so it worked.
Yeah, right.
And my wife looked at it and says, no, it looks ugly. And I'm like, well, I don't care about what it looks like. It has to work. But, so it goes to show that even when people have something, they want it to look a certain way. It has to look good. It has to feel right. So they all work together. Art, technology, it's all the same. And I think you really can't separate the two.
Well, that's interesting. I read an article recently. I think it was just an opinion piece, but it basically was all about the death of creativity, basically rooted in our education system.
Right.
And why do you think that is, that we are separating it? Like, it's such a common practice for us now to put the emphasis on the technical. And I see this even in the musicians that I deal with. For instance, we did our maiden voyage of Wicked Chops live on Drum Talk TV here today, and there was a person who was saying, oh, well, this is BS. And it's like, well, what's BS about it? Is it because I did not sit down and explain to you how everything works on a grid with the terminology and vernacular that you're used to, saying this is what knowledge is? And I know that because you've communicated exactly how I know it's supposed to be.
Right.
Now, I see that in the art world, where people are more interested in verifying whether or not you've executed the thing properly, as opposed to successfully communicated something that is true expression.
Right.
And so if that's happening in art itself, God, I got to imagine that it's really like, it's just like they just kind of took an eraser and took it out of the rest of the stuff,
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting point. It's kind of like, the whole chaos theory, from chaos comes order, from order goes chaos. We've gotten to the point in our civilization where everything is standardized. Everything, has to fit in a certain box. And if you don't fit within inside that box, we try to make it fit. And so in doing so, you've crushed creativity in ways of expression. And I'll give you an example. We have 4 children. All of my children they're really amazing kids. They really are. One is very smart, has a high EQ, has a high IQ. Then we have one that he's kind of learning. He's what do they call it? They call it developmentally delayed. But what it is, and what we figured out with him, he just doesn't fit in the box. He doesn't learn well in the classroom. He's totally hands-on. But where he excels is like the outdoors. I think we were like, he was like 9 or 10 at the time. We were young, and we were at my grandfather's property with 100 acres, and we were walking the property, and it was getting dark. And I said, hey, guys, we need to head back because, I don't know where we are now in the property. And then, the one that I didn't expect to actually save us was him. He was like, well, don't you see it? You see where we came from, right? I mean, when you put him outside, it just clicks. He's like, oh, you see the branch is moving that way? That's the way we came. And I said, well, I don't know where we are, son. He's like, can you see my feet? I said, yeah, because you got white shoes on. Just follow my feet and we'll leave. And he got us out of the woods.
Wow.
And he was like 9 years old. The rest of us were like,
wow, that's awesome.
But, you put him in a classroom, he's lost.
Yeah.
And I was kind of that way too. So I had to kind of learn differently than other people, but so I've learned my way, but also try to fit in that box as well. And I think you're going to see more of it, because more and more they want people to fit in a box. They want, and not to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but in my opinion, the powers that be don't want a group of thinkers. They don't want people to think too much. It's, they want to educate the kids to the point where they can be great workers, but not really great thinkers. And that's why you really don't see, if you look at the schools today, they're not really learning. They learn just the basics, just enough to be good workers, but not, if you looked at your education, Paul, it was probably much different than, say, the kids today. You got a lot more out of it.
Right.
So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, because I think what they're looking for above is control.
Yes.
More than anything else.
Yes.
And I think we've seen examples of that control.
Sure.
How do you guys think we could facilitate the fostering or the bolstering or whatever of those aspects of creating those kinds of thinkers, whether or not it be in the school? I mean, I do think that this place is doing it, and will when it's able to continue to do so, where we can actually invite more of the public in. I think there's a current of what you talked about here, doing something because you like it and you're passionate about it. And I feel like I don't see as many opportunities for people to execute in that way. I feel like there's a constant gearing up for the participation in a perpetual professional mindset.
Right.
And God, what can we do to
Well, in my opinion, I'll tell you what we do, and I live by the adage, each one teach one. If you see kids and people that are hungry, that hungry, not physically hungry, but hungry for knowledge, you foster that. And you got places, like you said, TechPort here is a place. That's why, I enjoy working with the interns, and, I have an opportunity to get some interns from the high school here.
Oh, great.
And again, these kids that are, I talked to a kid the other day. This kid was absolutely sharp, sharp, but had no idea about things we take for granted, money, writing a check. They have no idea how to do that stuff. They don't teach that stuff in school anymore. I remember when I was, their age, we had home ec. We could take, they taught you how to cook. They taught you how to write checks, just the basic things, but they're not getting a lot of that today. They don't get financial literacy, and they're not taught to think critically and independently. You have to think inside of that box, and that's where they want you. So I challenge everyone, if you're a critical thinker, teach someone else to think critically.
Right. No, I agree.
Let's just say the young people. It's not just young people, but let's just go there and say, okay, well, you're going to say each one teach one, and now you're dealing with, for instance, a situation where you're relying on people to show interest. You can't force somebody to do these things. Just like the situation that Paul and I had. When I met Paul, he spent 2 or 3 weeks calling me every day, or I would call him and he would tell me, you can't do this, you don't know what it takes, and it's not going to happen. And I was persistent, and I insisted, no.
But you had that fire. You were hungry.
Right, I had it myself, but what do you do? Do you think there's potential for these situations that are being created to sort of take the thinking away from it, or the creative thinking? Doesn't that squash the interest too?
It does.
So what do you do then?
I'll tell you how. I mean, again, this is strictly my opinion. This is what my wife, you need to have her here. She can give you her 2 cents on this big time.
All right.
They've shown that the biggest problem with these kids, this generation, is screen time. Screen time on these devices, whether it be cell phones, tablets, computers, they're tools. But the kids have come to rely on those, and it's a drug. They've proven that at Facebook, for instance, I shouldn't have used that word, but anyway, on Facebook, they have attention engineers. These people their job is to grab your attention, to design something to keep your attention. Yeah. So when that bell rings, on your phone, you hear the ding, the bling, the first thing you do, you look at it.
What do they call that? That endorphin rush?
Yeah, exactly. They say it's the same as getting a hit of cocaine.
Dopamine into you.
I had a nephew. He went with us on vacation, and it was like maybe 2 years ago. And when we go on vacation, it's no cell phones, no screen. You can look at it from time to time, you check your emails, but just let it be. Yeah. He literally went to withdrawals when we took his phone. I mean, he was shaking. He couldn't. I was like, wow.
That's terrible.
And so the solution in my mind is these parents have to be aware of that. And it shows when you read a book, it stimulates different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
As opposed to being fed. When you're fed, it actually kills brain cells when you're looking at the screens.
Yeah.
And so that's the way we change it. It starts with the parents. But unfortunately these days, a lot of the parents are young and they're used to these things themselves. So it's kind of a vicious cycle, so how do you get out of that mindset? So with our kids, I'll tell you, my son went to college, he graduated this past year. But when he went, I think his sophomore year, he called us up and said, thank you guys so much. Because when they were in high school and middle school, we would take the games away. I said, you can play video games, but you got maybe 5 hours a week tops. That's it. But you're going to read a book. We're going to play games as a family. We play Monopoly. We play all the typical games, you grew up with.
Right.
And so the video games were at a minimum. Yeah. And they hated us. They called us every name in the book. We were bad. But in college, he called me one day and said, man, thank you guys. I see how my classmates, they can't communicate. They can't talk with people. They can't think critically. You take the computer away, they're done.
Oh man.
And and
this what you're describing leads me to feel even more like a feeling that I have, which is I think that this is all a fad.
Sure.
That's going to go away, and it's just going to be like, big hair in the 80s. And you're going to be like, remember when we used to do that social media stuff?
Right.
That was ridiculous.
I saw a picture of Paul with big hair, too, by the way.
Yeah. I can't say anything about the changes in hair from
I don't think it's a fad, though. Because now.
Really?
No, everything.
You don't either? What?
No, because I actually shouldn't say it, but I actually believe that almost 80% of it is control. That's why it's put out there, because if you take it away, then what happens? Then what are those same people going to actually be able to do, or think for themselves to do?
Right.
I gotta think at some point the kids are gonna be like, this is some old people stuff. This social media is old people stuff.
Oh no, it's changing now. Like old social media is like Facebook. Like my daughter tells me, "Oh, that's old people now, Dad."
Yeah,
so they're moved on to other stuff, Twitter and TikTok and all the other stuff they're working with. But I don't think it's ever gonna go away, because now it's actually encouraged. Like my son, my youngest son, who's 16. He goes to St. Mary's Riken. They don't have books. They give them a tablet. And my wife was like, oh my God, I can't believe they gave him a tablet. So everything is done on his tablet. So he uses the tablet for schoolwork, but we always encourage him, look, we got a bunch of encyclopedias. Go read them.
Do you think that there's a difference between reading the same content on the screen as opposed to in a book? Like, do you think if they weren't using this tablet to do the social media interaction stuff, that they were just reading it like it was a book, would it be as bad?
Yes and no. the act of reading is good because when you're reading, your brain is stimulated to create memories and create pictures of what you're reading. That's the same. The downside is the EM field that's created by a lot of these tablets and things. Right. They've been proven to cause cancers, to cause problems. There was a young lady, I was watching a video on a young lady, she had developed a lump in her breast here, and they found out that she kept her cell phone right there. And it's the same, it's microwave radiation. Yes, exactly.
No.
Yes.
I just need to watch
If my wife were here, she would have probably said something, because
you'd be like, that's dangerous.
It's because you think about where they keep the tablets, they're like right here.
Yeah.
Right, and so think about that, what Paul was saying, part of it too is population control.
Oh man.
And you've seen birth rates are down. Birth rates are down. Yeah, they're down, and people want to know why. Cancers are up. You think the cell phone uses the same frequency as your microwave oven. It's EHF, extremely high frequency. We use them for satellites because you can get a lot of data on it. EHF. But the downside, on a military perspective, it's easily jammed. But it's great for transmitting data, and it's great for cooking your food. And so, why would you? And I don't know if you know about Johnny Cochran. He used to be an attorney. He passed away some years back, but he had brain cancer. And where his brain cancer was? It was on the side where he kept his cell phone. And he had a cell phone back during the 70s and 80s when they were huge. Yeah. And they had these huge fields, these huge EM fields, and put it next to your head. So usually when I talk on my phone, I talk with it on speaker and I keep it down, and I try to keep it toward my head. And so those are some of the things we teach to our kids. And so I kind of went down a rabbit hole.
No,
it was your question about reading, and does it stimulate the same thing? So yes and no.
There was a time where I felt like, and maybe it's just the company that I'm keeping more and more, but where you would talk about things like this, like this idea of control, whether or not it's population control with EM fields on your tablets and stuff, or if it's the social media where we can track everything that you're doing and all those things in order to, I always look at it as something as that really is so that they can market to you as well. But if you would talk to people about these sorts of ideas, they would just write you off as a kook. And now it's like more common that people are going, I feel like anyway.
Think about 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if I came to you off the street and I said, okay, Dominic, where's your address? Where do you live? What's your favorite food? Where do you like to vacation?
Yeah, what books have you read?
Right.
What's your favorite movie?
You'd have been like, why are you asking? You're being awfully nosy.
Yeah.
Asking all this stuff. But yet now, not you particularly, but you willingly put it on these social media. And every day I go on, I see this thing, and someone tells, we're vacationing in Costa Rica, and here's what I ate for breakfast, and here's my kids doing this, and here's this, here's that. And man, if I were a criminal, I was like, okay, the Johnsons are out in Costa Rica today, And so you're putting all this information out, and it's done purposely. So again, there are attention engineers that work for these companies that are designed to figure out ways to capture your attention and also find ways where you'll be willingly give up your information. North Korea keeps control of their population by force. They keep control of ours because we willingly do it. And again, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, being in the military, we've gone through different training in SEER schools and things like that. We're taught how to get information from people and how to get people to do what you want. If I told you right now, if I asked you, say, hey, you got $50? Give me $50. You probably wouldn't do it. Like, what do you need $50 for?
I would give you $50.
Well, I appreciate that. But let's say I caused a problem. Let's say I went and, I don't know, I flattened your tire or something. And it's like, man, Dominic, your tire's flat. For $50, I can fix it for you. So now I've caused a problem that you didn't know, but I've offered you a solution that you willingly did. Right. Because normally you wouldn't accept that. So, and I say that to say, people are saying, I don't like big government. The government's in our business. They're all, but yet you willingly give them everything because they caused this problem.
Sure. Yeah, I
Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but
no,
I just,
it makes sense to me. I do think of it as problematic, and I see it as problematic even in the functionings and the utilization of the benefit that it has or did have. It's becoming more and more impossible to disseminate information on this thing that's supposed to be made to help you disseminate information.
Right.
So I feel like it's going to go away. But I understand what you guys are saying. There's a lot for these people to lose.
I'll give you an example, Dominic. I got a niece that's, she might be 4 now, 3, 4. She was 2 years old, and people think it was amazing she could use a cell phone. Oh, she's so cute. She can use a cell phone. And I said, well, they're designed to be used, But, so you don't have to be a genius to use it. But my point is, she was addicted. And now she's like 5 or 6. I don't know how old she is now. But anyway, she's addicted. She cannot deal without having some kind of device in her hand. And I tell you that's why it's not going away. Because this generation of kids now that are toddlers and up to, say, elementary school, they're not going to be able to function without it. It's a drug. I've seen it. They cannot function. So I tell you, when you have children, make sure they read, make sure you keep them off devices, and like a dinner table, for instance. At our house, there are no devices at the dinner table. You don't sit and my sons, when they were in high school, they bring their friends over and they're sitting at the dinner table there. I said, no, we don't do that here. We talk, we look at each other, and, we have old-fashioned conversations. And I can't tell you how many kids I've spoken to, or look at today, we had the trolls pop up, with your thing. But if you were here face-to-face, they couldn't talk to you.
Yeah, right.
They can't even look you eye to eye. These kids can't make conversation outside of the devices.
Yeah.
So, and all that to say, I don't think it's a fad. I think it's here to stay. I mean, I can keep talking on and on about that. Like, for instance, the military uses it. I mean, in the simulators, they're all glass cockpits. They're all designed like for instance, I used to work in the Fire Scout program, which is a autonomous helicopter or UAV, and it's built just like a video game. It's built the exact same as a video
actual
game.
helicopter is.
Well, the controls.
The
controls.
Right.
And they're making them like video games. So kids,
so they can know how to
used
interface
to
with it.
Right. And a lot of these kids are desensitized to the killing because they're playing these killing games. To start another topic, discussion. Right. So me and my wife, we're really big on this. Like with our kids, they can't play the shoot 'em up games, we call them. The Call of Duty and all that stuff. We don't allow them that because that's the other part. It desensitizes you to it. You become numb, and life becomes like a video game. It's okay to shoot people, and you're seeing the result of it now in the society we live in.
Jeez, Brian.
You're not only seeing that in the society we're living in, you're seeing actually the government where there are thousands and thousands and millions of people right now in this country who are having great financial difficulties.
Yes.
And yet, because there's an election in 50 days, you don't see Congress or the Senate doing anything about anything other than them promoting their ideas that they would like to put forward.
Right.
And the people are actually not saying anything really about it.
Right.
Only a very, very small percent is saying anything. Whereas all of the money that they've taken in taxes, which in like 1900, they didn't have taxes and money. Now that they have hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars, you don't see that second round of checks being sent out.
Right.
And you don't see Congress acting. All they're doing is talking about which one of these two are you going to have and put in place in power.
Right.
Which one of what? What's two? So there's two. Who's putting the two up there? Us?
Right.
I don't think so.
You're really looking at the opposite sides of the same coin.
Right.
You know, they're both wings of the same bird, left and right wing of the same bird, you know. So, but they give you the illusion that there's a difference between the two, or the difference may be so subtle that they exacerbate that small difference to make you think that there's a huge difference, but it really isn't between the two of them. Well, and not to say these two, but through the history of politics, you know, there's very little different. You know, the American people are typically the ones to suffer. Not even the American people, the world people. You know, so it's worldwide.
I was going to say, you know, the situation that a lot of the world's population is living in around the world is subpar.
Yeah.
You know, when people are, generations of families are being born and living in refugee camps and living in poverty and famine and all these things, I feel like that's unnecessary. I mean, we live in a time where we have so much ability to generate. I mean, I feel like not only do we have the ability to generate ideas that we can share, I feel like there's situations that the way we do business in the world, as far as like this idea of always scaling, always becoming the greatest, you as a person or an entity that's trying to disseminate your product and have a market that is way beyond anything that you can ever reach, really.
Right.
And you then, in doing that, in your success, you've cut off the ability of somebody in their own community to provide that service to their community and function. And I just feel like that is an issue.
Sure.
Where we have parts of the world that could be farming and could be providing food for their community or their region or whatever, where that's not happening.
Right.
Why aren't they allowed to utilize that land or whoever's land that it has become? How did it become somebody's land even? So, you know, we could really get into a lot of this. You know? How are companies able to deplete natural commons resources and charge you for it?
Right.
How did that become theirs to charge you for? Outside of the fact that they said it was and they spent a bunch of money to put equipment on the property, and now it's theirs, and you can't be here, and we're selling you the stuff that comes from what we're doing here.
Right.
I don't know about all that, but I do think, as we should wind down here, that we should not only be dealing with what you're talking about as far as, or what we've been talking about as far as trying to foster that, whatever you want to call it, creativity, passion, interest beyond that which is fed to you. And then also brothers and sisters, man, let's do it. We're all brothers and sisters, and I just hope that we can treat ourselves and each other in a way that reflects that and affords each other the respect and consideration that they deserve, and we all deserve it. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Isolation of ideas, I think, is the thing that manifests to the growing of oppositional things. You know what I'm saying? So like if you have a belief that is never confronted by something that changes it or that stands in the way of it or against it or whatever, and you stay isolated in that, and it grows.
Absolutely. It festers.
Right. And that it might it be contagious. So we got to not have that isolation. We got to and be with brothers and sisters.
That's the point of learning, you know, and because you won't have that negative festering of those negative ideas, you know, you have to get out and learn, you know. I mean, not to keep going, but yeah, that's the place I was telling Paul, you know, the place I grew up, you know, it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, they don't even have gravity there. It's so remote. And the people that live there, they are very narrow-minded, very one-sided. They don't think because they've never left that area. You know, so and like you said, it all comes back. You know, you have to go out and learn, embrace other ideas.
I think though that I feel like you really don't have to leave where you are. Not even just because we have computers though.
Sure.
But you don't even have to leave where you are to be willing to have discourse with people. You know,
yes.
to believe that your mode of doing is good for where you are and what you are, but it might not be for somebody.
But, you know, else. I do think you have to leave your comfort zone to really understand it.
Really?
You know, it's just, again, my opinion. You know, it's one thing if I see something if I see things I grew up watching TV, I see things on TV and it's easy to say, well, these people shouldn't be doing that over there. They should be doing this. And I see that's going, but when you go there and they're immersed in that culture and with these people, then it really changes your thought. You see it for what it is. You're like, oh, wow.
I understand that. And I understand that it often requires that as an impetus to facilitate.
Sure.
But I think that it does not require it, actually.
Sure.
So maybe that's something we could also put into this mix of,
Right.
whatever, is that you don't. I sort of got lucky in a way where I'm not going to pretend like I didn't have to go through certain things to learn, but I always sort of had this thing where it was like I could hear it and learn it and feel like I didn't have to go and do it to know that that was true.
Right.
I understand. You provided me with that information, and we've touched on this, something similar to this in the past on these shows, where we've talked about sort of something similar to morphic resonance, where there is the ability for a community to understand and feel as if they have an experience because somebody in the community had the experience.
True.
And that same as the morphic resonance, the information is then shared.
True.
And maybe that sounds like woo-woo or not legit, but even just believing in the possibility of the idea, I think will give you that, you know what, I don't need to know these people over here and sit and break bread with them to realize that they are worth my consideration.
True.
So, and that they experience things that maybe I don't, and I don't have to do how they do. Just like they don't have to do how I do, and that's okay.
Right.
We do what we need to do for where we are.
That's right.
And yeah.
All right.
That's how I don't know if I could do more of this and then the show.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I got no other things to throw in there, so I will just say thank you all very much for being here. Thank you, Brian, for
Always a
joining
pleasure.
Paul and I today.
Yep, thank you.
We're going to do it again, I'm sure sooner than not.
And thank you, Alec.
Yeah, thanks,
Yes.
Alec, for running the camera. He's a high-quality cameraman we have here at TechPort,
Awesome.
One of the interns. And remember, we do this every Tuesday. We convene here in the hangar, and when things sort of clear up and the public is allowed, we do have space for friendly faces and even not so friendly faces. Just come on and hang out. Every Monday, we release the Little Rock Cottage sessions, which is sort of documenting the music that Paul and I are developing, and every Wednesday we release what you're watching now as a podcast, and it's on Spotify and Apple Music and that sort of thing. And we do a TechPort Spirit of Innovation and Freedom YouTube exclusive with Progress Culture on Screen, which is what you're watching right now. And every Friday, that's on Thursdays, and every Friday we do Progress Culture sessions where we do more music. So hope you'll check more stuff out and join us again in the future. We love having you. We'd love to hear from you. If you have thoughts or comments or questions or anything like that, get in touch, and we will see you again soon. Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you all so much for being with us. We are grateful that you give us your consideration and attention. Please follow and reach out to the Spirit of Innovation and Freedom and TechPort on Facebook and YouTube, or at spiritinnovationfreedom.com and techportsomd.org, and also www.progressculture.org. Let us know what you're thinking and what you want to hear about and how you're feeling. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to see you again next week on Progress Culture. Thank you, much love, and see you soon.